Colorado is on a path to never before seen COVID-19 hospitalizations. The state is running out of options that aren't economically catastrophic.
The next level is a shutdown.
We look at whether another shutdown is a realistic possibility and whether advances in treating COVID might let us power through a third wave in a way that we couldn't last spring. A plan to support our small businesses through the coming hard winter. And did you get 2 ballots? It is probably not a conspiracy, just needs some untangling, like this guy, who raises questions about when wildlife officers intervene in nature. All that is next. I miss summer. Sunshine aside, I miss when we were able to share encouraging COVID-19 numbers with you. Those months when we celebrated the low hospitalization rate, the fact that the virus was largely in check in Colorado. Each day we would share that positive news and move on and talk about something else. The news now is not good, and it shows no signs of getting better. So we're going to spend some time going in depth tonight on the likelihood of another shutdown in Colorado and whether what seems to be a less lethal virus now means maybe we don't have to resort to trading economic ruin for public health. To the numbers first. Hospitalizations are spiking. Look at the curve. 446 this time last week, 622 now. The curve is ramping up sharply. Colorado added 1,550 new cases today. Our 7-day average of new cases a day is over 1,500. The current positivity rate for tests is 6.88%. 7-day average now tops 7%. Yet deaths remain low, a few a day. Now, we know that that's a lagging indicator, can be weeks or a month out, but it suggests that better treatment these days is allowing hospitalized patients to recover. Our in-house expert on this, Chris Vanderveen, says it could also be a result of hospital capacity. That's where we began our longer conversation.
When you have a very sick COVID patient, it's a very labor-intensive process. You've got to have staffing ratios that lead to sort of reasonable care. But when the numbers start to go into a level where they get so full that the ratios start to become problematic, that I think is the worry, and that's why you're starting to see hospitals start to gear up, start to build some flexibility in there right now.
If we end up in a situation like we did in the springtime, where capacity in hospitals is strained but not to the breaking point, and the deaths don't come like they did in the spring, for whatever reason we keep the death rate down, is it reasonable to think that there's going to be some kind of public discussion that perhaps we just let this roll?
That's going to be an interesting tug of war that takes place between sort of the public health side that is going to say we need to do more shutdowns, and the economic side that says if we continue to do these shutdowns, we're going to be in such a position that is going to be devastating for the economy. So you're going to have that push and pull. You're hearing it now. I suspect under the scenario that you put forth, Kyle, you're going to hear that even more. And the question is, who wins out in all of this?
Do you get the sense that another statewide shutdown is even on the table as a political and public health reality?
I get asked that a lot, and I don't think so, at least not right now. The appetite for that is incredibly low for obvious reasons. I'm not going to guarantee that it's not going to happen. I just can say right now that everybody is doing everything they can to avoid that possibility.
Lastly, Chris, what would you encourage people to just keep in mind as we move forward into these next couple of weeks?
2 months ago, the chances of you being in a room with somebody infected were way down. Right now, it's way up. And so you have to ask yourself, what things are worth it in your life to keep yourself and your family safe? I'm personally not going to be taking a lot of risks because I know what's out there. The virus is out there in large numbers that we have not seen in Colorado in many, many months.
My full discussion with Chris Vanderveen is on the next YouTube page, and we talk about why cases are rising in parts of Colorado where people are doing a pretty good job wearing masks. To Anusha Roy now, who's digging into Denver's change in just how many people are allowed to gather in one place.
Remember 2 weeks ago when the city of Denver said people had to cut down the number of people they hang out with to 5 to help slow down COVID-19? Then Denver slid back to safer level 3 this week, and we asked if that still stands. The city's response? The city of Denver will align with the state's level 3 of a maximum of 10 people that can gather together instead of 5. If that feels counterintuitive, we were right there with you. The city said it's trying to avoid confusion and also wrote, plus our order did not address limiting households coming together to just 2. That last part is important.
The idea, I think, behind limiting the number of households you're interfacing with effectively limits the number of people, actually.
Is to limit possible exposure of people who may have COVID, either with symptoms or without symptoms.
The state health department said 5 people from 5 households is more risky than 5 people from 2 households. The rules are for personal gatherings like at the park and homes, areas that are not regulated in the same way as other places like restaurants and office spaces. The city of Denver says if people from 2 different households meet, they are supposed to wear masks inside and outside. And it's not just for Denver. On October 23rd, the state health department amended their public health order, limiting personal gatherings in all counties at all safer at home levels. Now, local governments decide gathering sizes in the Protect Our Neighbors phase, the least restrictive level, but the state is asking all Coloradans to help.
You actually also want to know who else that other household is interacting.
Are they adhering to wearing a mask when they're not with you? Do they wash their hands? Do they socially distance?
For Next, I'm Anusha Roy.
We learned this morning bail is not going to be lowered for the unlicensed security guard who's facing second-degree murder charges for shooting and killing a man during protests downtown earlier this month. Judge today denied the request from the attorney of Matthew Doloff to have his bail reduced from $500,000. Doloff was at work protecting a 9 News crew that day, hired by a company that 9 News contracted with for security. Doloff's attorney argued that he is not a flight risk. Judge disagreed. Doloff's been in jail since October 10th, the day that he shot and killed 49-year-old Lee Keltner. There is one contentious political issue that you are not voting on this election season. Aurora is considering raising its minimum wage to $17 an hour by 2025. Because it's not a tax increase, it's City Council's call. And lo and behold, it showed up on the agenda the day before election night. Here's Marshall Zellinger.
The state's minimum wage is $12 an hour. That's also what it is still in Aurora. Ask me again next week. At a study session last month, a proposal to increase Aurora's minimum wage to $20 an hour by 2027 was discussed and fought against by the Aurora Business Advisory Board.
Most are hoping just to cut the losses. Let me repeat that, cut their losses to 20 to 25%, and are simply hoping to break even this year.
Increasing earnings for those that spend the most of their income in our communities is good for business and good for our economy.
And ultimately, it did not move forward to an official city council meeting.
I don't intend to take it to the floor without support from out of study session.
Yet 2 days ago, the sponsor of the ordinance, Councilmember Allison Coombs, said this on a Facebook video.
Our minimum wage proposal is back. We have the votes, so we're going to get this done.
You said, I don't intend to take it to the floor without support from study session.
I suppose I should have said without support from my colleagues. I didn't intend to take it to the floor if I thought that it was going to fail.
Instead of a minimum of $20 an hour by 2027, here is what Council will vote on Monday. January 2021, $12.60 an hour. 2022, $13.23 an hour. 2023, $14.55 an hour. 2024, $16 an hour. And January 2025, $17 an hour.
Our workers need the boost, and we can't keep forcing them to bear the brunt of this pandemic alone. And if we're going to call people essential workers, we need to give them essential pay.
The Medicare support nursing homes have said, if you do this, we will close, because there's no way that we can increase the revenue from Medicare because it's federally set. So you're going to increase our cost, and we won't be able to increase the amount of money that we charge.
Councilmember Dave Gruber, who was against the idea in study session, said he found out it was going to be on Monday's council agenda after the Coombs video posted saying she had the votes.
I received my official copy of the ordinance last night. The whole thing that we're going to do on Monday is theater.
The meeting hasn't happened yet, so help me understand. How do you have the votes?
My colleagues have told me that they are willing to support the proposal.
Council votes require 2 votes for something to become the ordinance. So the first would be this primary vote Monday. If it were to pass, it would have to pass one other vote, Kyle, which would happen after the election when we find out if certain things on the ballot are going to cost businesses elsewhere.
And as always, the details are vital.
Yeah, I was reading through what the ordinance that's actually going to become the law, and it talks about if a business is in violation of the new minimum wage, you don't even have to be an employee. It could be a third-party member, a union, someone that says, hey, I think you're violating the minimum wage. We're going to challenge you with the city, and we could sue you in court. So it's not just the person experiencing it, but someone from the outside could come in and start to shake things up.
Interesting. All right. Also interesting. A gorgeous sweater. Thank you, Marshall. Hey, we're getting some feedback, some spicy feedback tonight from Jake, all the way out in Yampa, Colorado. Jake says he got 2 ballots in the mail and emailed asking if we would investigate what he says a clear case of voter fraud, writing, "Doubt it, because Soros owns you too." We asked Jake to see photos of the ballots before they were voted, and Jake declined, saying, like I said, Soros controlled. Okay, so setting aside the oft-repeated conspiracy theory about a liberal Jewish billionaire running the world, we can clear up this issue of multiple ballots for Jake. We will do it with the help of a next viewer who is willing to share the specific details of 2 ballots. Nancy has a primary home in Jefferson County and a second home in Park County, and she says she got a ballot at each address. Why 2 ballots? Jeffco clerk George Stern explained.
There are some instances in which a voter would get 2 ballots if they're, say, a property owner and they get a ballot that just has special district property notices on it. I sent out in Jefferson County about 1,000 ballots this year to property owners. The only thing on it is their special district that are for people who might not live there but own property there and have a say in things like water districts and fire districts.
To repeat, people who get a second ballot for another property they own do not get a second vote for president or senate. They only vote those races on the ballot on their primary residence. And another reminder, even if there were to be a ballot error somewhere, that alone is not voter fraud. We talk about this a lot. Voter fraud is when someone then chooses to vote illegally. That looks like the least comfortable hammock we've ever seen. This buck situation teaches us wildlife officers' philosophy about when to intervene and when to let nature take its course. Let's make a game plan to help Colorado's small businesses through what is likely to be a harsh winter for them.
Any small business that needs some help during this pandemic, I want to support them.
She has a specific idea for us. Next.
A beautiful Thursday afternoon across the metro area. Everyone's soaking in that sunshine and the above average temperatures. We hit 68 out at DIA, just a bit above our average high of 60. Tonight we fall into the 20s and 30s here for the metro area under mostly clear skies. The futurecast takes us into tomorrow, Friday, and we're looking good except for tomorrow afternoon and through the evening. That's when we'll have some stronger winds coming up across the Front Range Mountains and foothills. Wind gusts as high as about 25 to 35 miles per hour, possibly even a few gusts as high as 40 miles per hour. Temperatures, though, warming back up in the 50s and 60s here for the Front Range. High pressure scoots off to the east, making way for just a brief cool off in time for Halloween. We'll be in the mid-50s Saturday, but the 70s are back as we welcome in November.
You've seen it. We've seen it. Colorado Parks and Wildlife has seen way too much of it. A wild animal spotted in distress. And then the question, what's the right thing to do? The latest is a photo that a viewer named Leilani sent us of a buck in her neighborhood, Happy Canyon. That would be a hammock that is completely wrapped around the buck's head and antlers. Wildlife officers made the choice in this case to intervene and remove the netting. Now, we know there have been similar situations where they chose not to get involved, to let nature play out. So we talked to CPW for some insight on this, and they said that as a general rule, they prefer to stay hands off, let nature take its course, unless they feel like the animal is a danger to itself or to people. In this case, the buck tangled up with the hammock. They figured, well, it'll eventually shed the antlers and the hammock with it, but they were worried that before that happened, they'd walk out into traffic. CPW says they will rarely tranquilize wildlife unless it's a life or death situation because the drugs can often be really hard on the animals. Last thing, they ask that we remind everybody, don't try and attempt and intervene yourself. Best thing to do is exactly what our viewer Leilani did. Take a photo or a video and shoot it off to CPW.
I've had several people comment that they're committed to purchasing 100% of their holiday gifts from small businesses locally.
It's going to be tough for a lot of restaurants and small shops to stay open, even through the holidays. A business owner wants to rally Colorado to get those mom and pop places through to next year. more small businesses will almost certainly close as a result of the restrictions because of Colorado's COVID-19 surge. I say now is the time to do what we did back in April and May and really go out of our way to patronize places that we know need help. I put on 18 pounds with takeout food, so you know that I did my part. Some of you have told me that you did as well. You always just grab a gift card, too, to help places that you don't want to patronize in person, or you just can't eat it for a 7th day in a row. We want to hear your other ideas, like Talia Haken's Shop Small, Shop Local idea.
Every business started as an idea. Every business has an important role to play in our society and in our community. I'm Talia Haken and I run Haken Family Cider. We are a hard cider or a cidery, so we make alcohol out of apples. So I was speaking to friends who are business owners. I was actually at the nail salon that I go to. It's owned by two sisters. And we were talking about how difficult it was during the first shutdown and how we weren't sure how we were going to survive a second shutdown. And so I created a Facebook group called Shop Small, Shop Local in the hopes that we could all share ideas for local small businesses, give people ideas of how to buy their holiday gifts for their family members locally. You can still purchase online, and a lot of times you can do curbside pickup, but this supports a local business that may go out of business otherwise. I think we have all been generally spoiled with the incredible diversity of businesses we have, especially in Denver, but when they start to close, you lose that diversity and you lose the fun, interesting vibe that you have in the state. So I just hope that more people commit to supporting local businesses and spending their dollars in Colorado or with a small business versus large corporations, so we can sort of stem the tide of businesses that have to close because of how bad 2020 sucks.
Preach it. So I don't own a Jeep, so I'm not allowed to do the Jeep wave. But I always want to salute those brave souls driving doors off on a cold Colorado day. Next, a Jeep driver who needs more than just a simple salute. The most Colorado thing we saw today is a fresh look for some of these Jeep. Missy sent us a picture of a Jeep in her neighborhood in Littleton. Doors off, I mean, that's great, but maybe not that particular day with the coat of snow on the interior. If you see something like that that just screams Colorado at you, share it with us. Email next@9news.com or get our attention with the hashtag HeyNext. JM writes in during the program tonight, I noticed you're going to be on the air at 4:30 in the morning the day after Election Day. You just going to stay up all night? 1 Jay, thank you for watching our election coverage promo. 2, yeah, I probably am just going to stay up all night. Here's the deal for Election Day around here. Our coverage from NBC starts at 4 p.m. on 9 News. At 7 p.m., I'll be on our coverage on Channel 20, our live and local coverage covering Colorado. And then, assuming that things are not going to be decided by the next morning, because they won't be, I will see you bright and early at 4:30 a.m., where I am absolutely certain to say something stupid. We'll see you next time.